Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after a difficult series, OpTic Texas up against Toronto Ultra, Dashy has given his perspective on why they fell short in the series, talking about the online Call of Duty aspect of the series. Toronto being rather good online. Is that the true reason, or is there more going on here than meets the eye? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Plenty to discuss. Also an update on ranked play. Congratulations to Treg. Once again, they've got the backpack on into the competitive COD scene. Now, whether these issues are fully solved, sometimes Infinity would especially like to say things are fixed, and then they're actually not really fixed. So we'll see about this. But what they say is fixed an issue causing players to receive harsher suspensions than intended, fixed an issue causing players to get kicked for inactivity despite being active in a match. So we'll see, tricky one, right? Because they want to kick players that are inactive, but if you're actually moving around a little bit, even if you're snaking a head glitch for 30 seconds, you probably should be allowed to stay in the game, because that's what Cellium got kicked for the other day. Fixed an issue that would incorrectly display that SR was reset to 0. So these were the three things that were causing some problems. Also the ISO hemlock being allowed, that's now banned. So there's very few things remaining that Treg really need to solve here in ranked play. Of course, anti-cheat would be nice, red dots would be nice, dead silence would be nice, but unfortunately that's not Treg's prerogative to provide. Last night's series, all things considered, were pretty boring, but the storylines were certainly not that came out as a result. I thought this is pretty funny actually between Dashy and Kismet the other day, discussing some voice medals like they had back in the Halo days, right? But yeah, there wasn't too many kill-taculars going on for Dashy and co last night. Also thought this was quite interesting for Money Hill Stats, discussing wins in hardpoint so far this season while getting outslayed. This is a stat which, the subliners of last year would have dominated, and so would the Dallas Empire during the Cold War season, when they would consistently, it was kind of like the Crim 6 philosophy in a way, they'd play incredibly fundamentally sound, so even if they didn't get all the kills, they'd still often win games while getting outslayed. It doesn't really happen that often. FaZe have only done it one time this season, OpTic have only done it one time this season. The teams that seem to have the best fundamentals, potentially, are Boston at 5, even Guerrillas at 4, but maybe just because they get outslayed a lot in the first place, they have a lot of sample size. But then there's Thieves at 5 as well. So Thieves and Breach kind of top the numbers here. This is before yesterday's games, so maybe that changed a little bit. But still, I thought it was pretty interesting. And Rokkr don't have any. Rokkr, they have to outslay to win, which is maybe not what you want to see. So probably not the most indicative of stats to how good a team is, but I thought quite interesting to mention. The cheating drama also isn't going away. Scump even said on stream last night that he reckons someone is going to be using right now the single tap to sprint. Of course, the pros have GA'd the auto tactical sprint, but single tap to sprint effectively does the same thing almost, and actually still allows you to walk, right? Which is one thing that you can't do when you've got an auto tac sprint on. Now, the pros have decided that this kind of setting is not going to be allowed because it reduces the skill gap. Some have said, Doug Sense Martin in the past, that actually they should just allow it because it's going to maintain the longevity of these players' careers, their hands and all this type of stuff, mashing the controller again and again. Scum even said that at some point as well. It was like his hands are, they're taking a toll in his hands with all the actions per minute you've got to press as a pro player nowadays. So maybe there's an argument they should allow it, but again, there are questions being raised about some of the integrity these players and teams have, and even, Slasher has made very clear about the loudness equalization, the sound EQ, and even Scrappy's going to talk about it here in a second. So this OpTic series last night, a swift 3-0, Toronto came through. OpTic were looking strong. They were up 5-2 in the search and destroy, at least in the search and destroy. Their respawns weren't looking so good. It was 5-2, it became 6-5 to Toronto, and that was GG. What went wrong for OpTic in this series? Is it indicative of a larger problem with this team going forwards? Dashy's given his thoughts. Of course, we saw what Scrappy's thoughts on the series were. Shotzzy even last night said, look, that wasn't us. We'll be back in business over the coming days. It's a little bit interesting that Shotzzy individually, this guy, when you watch him play rank play and stuff, looks unbelievable, and for good reason. And when you watch matches from his POV, looks unbelievable, but whether that translates into results, even Huke lately has arguably been their best player, which is a bit of a surprise given what we expected of Huke coming into the team, and where Dashy has dropped like a 0.8 and a 0.6 in back-to-back series. Obviously, Scrappy, we know what he was saying about Ghosty. This guy only knows how to be in the hard point. If he's not in the hard point, he has no idea what he's doing. The drag talk for this guy is unbelievable. Will it backfire, though, if and when they play on LAN? I also have to share this because last night there was a clip that came out of Simp practicing his moves, his boxing on stream, and I cropped it down to this. I thought, this is just fantastic. I'm going to have to use this for other occasions, but I thought the capture was decent as well. And this has always been the thing with OpTic, right? Whenever they struggle, there's got to be a scapegoat. Is it Ghosty? Is it Huke? Is it Shotzzy? Is it Dashy? There's multiple candidates right now. It's not clear because previously, iLLeY was the obvious scapegoat on the team. Even during I remember on the Dynasty days, they would lose lose on a Friday and like people will be calling for Karma to get dropped, and then it'd have like a monster Sunday and they'd win the entire tournament. And it's like Karma was always the easy scapegoat back then. Nowadays, a bit more tricky. There was a bit of a back and forth actually between Slasher and Sim on this. So apparently they're getting ready to go. Slasher's been getting the box in on lock, and as Sim says, I'm catching up to you, better have that seatbelt buckled tight. So pretty entertaining stuff. Now, some were calling out Scrappy for using the loudness equalization thing that's kind of cheating or whatever, and Scrappy says, I don't use it, your team is just terrible. Now, Scrap did admit, right, and I think they have said that someone on Toronto is using it. We don't exactly know who. Scrappy says he doesn't use it because he wants it to be the same online to LAN. But I think he did say that some of his teammates, or one of them or whatever, does use it. So, you know, bit tricky. Scrappy says, though, he doesn't. So, you know, think of what you will on that one, to be honest. And even Scrappy says, GG's OpTic, I'm on my BS the rest of the year, play New York tomorrow, because during stage 2, Scrappy was like, oh, I'm not really playing on top form, and now he seems to be there. Now, Dashy's perspective, though, is the following. Online COD is comedy. This came out, I think, just before the video last night went live, and it's a very interesting tweet that there's a lot to dissect here, because we said last night, and I think it is clear that Toronto Online are pretty unbelievable. The Bell Fiber lines or whatever, they fry online generally, but that doesn't tell the entire story, right? You look at the numbers from last night's series, Shotzzy, Huke still individually had a pretty decent series, Dashy had like a 0.6. It's not like everyone was getting fried. Like that series they played against FaZe back in Cold War, where they were on the Atlanta server, the entire team got absolutely bodies. Whereas in this case, you know, a couple of players were holding their own, and then Dashy and Ghosty had a pretty difficult time individually up against Scrappy and Insight on the AR lines on the other side. So if this series was on LAN and it was at Major 3 in Texas, would it be a different story? Would OpTic have put up a better fight? How many gunfights went the way? And in fairness, right, Dashy had a load of damage in that game 3 for just 5 kills. There was probably a lot of gunfights he was losing by one single bullet, which might be at times the difference of, you know, a small difference in ping, which is of course a factor. But when you look at the fact they got 3-0'd in the control, like the mistakes they made, especially I would say in the round 11 of the Search and Destroy, getting 250 to 125 or so in the hard points, like, you know, that's not just online COD, right? That's not just this small advantage in terms of ping, like that is fundamentally playing worse Call of Duty. And like, if OpTic had played perfect fundamental COD yesterday, they could well have still won that series, right? The ping doesn't make that much difference. If you're playing perfect fundamental COD, you can still win, even at a disadvantage of ping. And it's also tough to say whether that actually is even true in the first place, this disadvantage of ping, because we'll see in a second that, you know, well, the results, let's say, for so far this season, just wanted to though show again the numbers from the series, just to kind of show the extent of the difficulties that OpTic had yesterday if you guys missed the series. But this is the head-to-head between Toronto and OpTic Texas over the last couple of seasons since they were OpTic Texas. So far this season, they played 3 times, one of which was yesterday, of course. They got bodied 3-0. They also lost 3-0 in groups at Major 1. So Major 1 on LAN in Group B, Toronto beat them 3-0. And that was on LAN, right? Okay, different team at the time, very different team to what we have today. Then Major 2 qualifiers, week 2, about this time last month, they won 3-1 against Ultra. So that was online, and if the whole theory is that Toronto are just godlike online and can't possibly ever lose a series online because they're so good and OpTic could never beat them online, I mean, they beat them 3-1 literally last month. Okay, slightly different teams on both sides, but nonetheless, right, the story doesn't really check out to me. And this is the frustration. If I was an OpTic fan, I'd be frustrated with a tweet like this from Dashy, to be honest, because it seems to me to imply that, you know, Dashy believes that online was the reason why they lost the series. Now, look, at the end of the day, OpTic made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure they can go back in that series and find a lot of ways they can improve and lessons they can learn. If the mindset is, oh, well, it was online against Toronto, you know, they're too good online, this type of stuff, we're never going to beat them online, then, you know, are you going to learn as much as you could from the series? Is that the right mindset to have when, you know, you're kind of blaming online COD for a defeat like this, when I think there's a lot else that OpTic could learn in terms of their playstyle, playing together, teamwork, and other things that they certainly need to improve on? Like, that's not just going to change on LAN. So I think this mindset isn't really ideal for OpTic, I would say. And also, like, this is the question to me about the whole Dashy versus Rambo conversation, right? The fact that Rambo has effectively been fired as the head coach is, you know, maybe in the short term it works. Dashy's freed up a little bit. But, you know, in the longer term, not having a voice that is kind of like an actual head coach of the team that can direct discussions. It's very much a player-led team right now. They make all the calls, they make all the roster changes. Maybe JP Krez does a little bit of kind of man management coaching, but mostly analyst work, and Rambo's not there anymore. Is there anyone there to say, look, guys, it wasn't online today, we made a lot of mistakes, let's actually focus up and solve these problems? Or is it just going to be the players making their own calls? Because at the end of the day, there was probably a reason why Rambo wanted Dashy drops. There's a reason why maybe even Shotzzy was down for that idea. And yes, things have turned rapidly on their head at OpTic, and they've built around Dashy over the last, you know, month or so. But from my perspective, it's tweets like this that kind of imply that are OpTic really, from a mental perspective, where they need to be to actually would be a championship winning team if this is the perspective after they get absolutely bodied by a Toronto team last night. It may just be Dashy's perspective. He may not mean this, fully right. I'm sure he recognizes there were errors made last night, but still, if this is what he thinks was the fundamental problem last night, then I think they need to watch a bit of VOD, to be honest. I also wanted to follow up a little bit on Nameless's tweet because, of course, last night he says, no disrespect to Ghosty, and then proceeded to disrespect Ghosty for 2 tweets in a row, which I thought was pretty entertaining. And then he says this, just played a ranked game, and this guy said, why are you hating on OpTic? And then sat in Sword until we lost. Never solo queuing again. I also wanted to share a couple of things here, just reaction from the OpTic guys last night, Scump and Methods, to the result that they had.
See, I just saw someone in the chat come in and say, not enough scrims, get off of ranked. Tough series. Gotta tip the hat. I don't think ranked play has anything to do with it, though. So please don't start that one.
I mean,
it's always something, dude.
If anything, they're getting more reps than they would if they were just scrimming. So the argument is just makes 0 sense because they're scrimming and getting more reps playing ranked.
Ranked makes you overconfident, so you're saying they just shouldn't play ranked. It's always something.
Do you feel like the Rookie of the Year matchup going up against Ghosty in this series, or was there an extra edge or extra fire you had going up against OpTic?
Yeah, I would say probably the edge is me going against Ant, because that guy talks a lot. He loves dolphin diving, but you can't just dolphin dive around this league, bro. You got to win a gunfight. And
He's so
no, there was nothing with Ghosty, bro. I knew that the guy was getting rinsed, bro. The guy defaults to the hill, and if he's not in the hill, he has no clue what's going on. So
this guy is stupid.
I respect how he's consistent across every single team, though. He just talks to talk.
He talks to everybody.
I'd slap that headset off his head.
So let's talk about the 4 series that are going on tonight. New York versus Toronto Ultra. So OpTic play again on Sunday up against the Minnesota Rokkr. Today they don't play. There were some great games today, though, I think. Okay, maybe some would say boring, but honestly, yes, it was pretty damn boring with all the 3-0s. I don't think we're going to get that today. New York versus Ultra to start out the day is a fantastic series. Ultra looked great yesterday, of course. Subliners are always going to be very solid. Their respawn is good, if not great. Their search and destroy has been getting better. Like, if this doesn't go game 5, I'll be disappointed. I feel like it should go game 5. Don't know who to take in a game 5. I might take Ultra game 5, actually. I'm still not fully sold yet on the Subliner search and destroy is going to be good enough to take down Ultra, but I guess we'll see about that one. Then Surge Thieves, another great series, because Surge, this is their, natural redemption arc where they get bodied in a major and then come back swinging the next major. They're looking good so far. They can definitely beat Thieves, especially online, like Texas-based team, of course, in Surge. So, yeah, I don't know. Thieves are currently 1-2. Thieves have been going 2-3 in, like, every set of qualifiers for ages now. So I might take Surge to win this 3-1, I think. I'm not sure if it goes game 5. I'm still not fully convinced by Surge's search and destroy. But yeah, I think I'm going to take Surge 3-1. I might even have them winning game 2 Surge, actually, in a shocking turn of events. Then Boston versus Mutineers is funny, really, because the other day I was saying that Boston are kind of like OpTic in the way that they're kind of just all gunny, not necessarily too much brain, even though I think they do probably have more brain than OpTic right now. But I was saying that OpTic maybe in terms of skill a bit pack-a-punch. Maybe that's not actually the case, or maybe Boston are the pack-a-punch version of OpTic Texas right now. I don't really know, because they beat down on Los Angeles Guerrillas more so than OpTic did. So I'm certainly going to take them to beat Florida here. Maybe a 3-1, maybe a 3-0. It should be swift. And then Legion FaZe. Interesting series again. Obviously, Legion put up a good fight against Thieves while they beat Thieves, and they were not too far away from beating Toronto, who we know are pretty good online, and Vegas certainly aren't. So I hope this goes game 5, but I think FaZe 3-1 is probably the safer prediction. But very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.